What you see up here is the start of the Scrum Master Improvement self-assessment, all right? So I am demoing in a staging environment here, and we've set up some kind of personas that we're going to use. We've kind of mocked up some data to do a little demo and take you through some of the key features that are going to help you get the benefits. So as I look here, I'm going to click the Take Survey button. So you see this pretty simple user interface popping up here. I am aware of my Scrum team's understanding and effective application of the Scrum accountabilities and how they work together to enable success. And so what you see here is pretty straightforward, right? Is this true? Is this more true than false? Neither false nor true, more false than true, and false. So it's a pretty simple scale and consistently throughout the survey. We also have some tooltips here. So when you see the question mark, not every question has one, but where we wanted to make sure we're providing greater clarity of like, what is really meant here, right? Because the question isn't just, do I know what the Scrum Guide says? That's not really what we're getting at. This is more about the ability to apply it. And so we've added some tooltips here to kind of really help people be more intentional and really like kind of dig a little deeper into like, well, what am I really here? Right. So I might think like, oh, well, I do get it to some degree, but maybe I've been struggling with like, I think I'm helping, but there's still, it's not really working great. So maybe I say, maybe it's more true than false. And again, I may rate myself differently than somebody else might, right? So this isn't about comparing. It's not a test where you're looking for the highest score. So for this one, I'm aware of my Scrum team's proficiency in leveraging the Scrum events for effective inspection and adaptation, right? So I may know what the Scrum Guide says, I may know the rules of Scrum, but to really ask myself, like, are we really getting, the most out of these events in terms of inspection and adaptation? And so maybe I go with a neither false or true. So I'm not going to read all of these to you, obviously, but I wanted to kind of give you a sense of, some of the questions. They do kind of go in order through those different dimensions we talked about. So similar dimension questions will appear and then moves to the next dimension. It's not like random. It kind of goes with a natural flow. I know when I've done the assessment as well, I would click the back button a few times, just be like, wait, was I honest with myself on that question? Maybe I need to go back. So just like to point out the kind of the basics of navigating here. What we're looking at here is one of our personas set up in our staging environment, Jamie. And so what we see here is this visible result area of our dashboard here. And we can see each of those different dimensions, and the color coding will be kind of carried throughout the survey, the self-assessment. And you see the scores for each of those. And then we see our total score to the left. So what we see with Jamie is that, Jamie maybe is a Scrum Master who kind of really came from, maybe the developer background, like very process oriented, like really into empiricism and like process, but maybe has struggled with some of the team dynamics aspect of things. And what does it mean to influence change, with the team and with the wider organization. And so what we can see here is that the developing people and teams is a little bit on the lower side here. We also can see here, I want to point out that the survey has been taken more than once. So this is an aspect of where you can see your history over time. Now, you are likely not going to take the self-assessment within a week. This is mocked up test data, so that's why the dates are really close to each other. But what I want to show you is you can actually click on in this top bar the previous assessment, and then you see what happened there. And you may have noticed that in the previous assessment, Jamie rated themselves higher in some of these categories, like understanding and applying the Scrum framework. And so this is actually not going to be that uncommon. Because again, at least in my experience, we tend to think we know more than we do, right? And then we start to realize like, oh my gosh, this is almost a never-ending learning journey. And there's things I thought I knew and I needed to unlearn them. So I just we showed that in this mocked up data as well. And now the other piece I want to show you here is towards the top here. Right now we're in the results dashboard. I'm going to click on progress over time. And so this is another view of kind of the history. And so you can see here those trend lines, right? Where, Jamie likely, got more experience, maybe went to got some support from maybe a coach or went to a professional Scrum training and actually kind of was like, oh, wow, like there's a lot here that I don't know as much about, and got a little bit more honest with himself now that, he had that greater awareness. So that's another little handy tool. And so over time, you're going to be able over the course of your career, this may be something you want to take every maybe quarter or maybe every 6 months, right? It's really a personal decision and likely depends a lot on where you are in your own career and what you have space for. But this is something you're going to kind of be able to go back and look at your history. What I want to point out is in the bottom section here, this is where the recommendations are. So the suggested resources, recommended resources. And so the way these appear is they're based on score. So the lowest scoring self-assessment questions are going to be at the highest, are going to be higher ordered. But also then I like to point out that they kind of just go in order from like the order of the items. So it's not to say that the first one is a lower number than the second one because the scale is not, like a huge scale of like 100. So this is again where, it's giving you information, but then you are going to be intentional about what do I actually need based on what I'm seeing in these results. And so Jamie might be thinking, you know what, I really am struggling with this team I'm working with. I'm trying to support self-management, but I just am not being successful. They're struggling. What do I do? And so Jamie sees that and Jamie says, all right, I want to see what resources are here. So you can click on the question to expand it. And note, you can see that the color coding and you can clearly see which dimension we're looking at here as well, the developing people and teams. And so if I look down here, what I see is several resources that I can look at. So the icon here kind of gives you a little tip of what type of resource this is. And then we have a short description under each resource so that you get a little information to kind of help you make some choices about, what do you want to go look at. So this one here, this 10 tips to enable self-managing teams is a webinar. So we can see this in the description here. It's a 1-hour webinar. I can see that this is an 18-minute video. We can see this is an article, like a blog post. We can see if we want to go in depth into a professional training. And then what Jamie wants to do, Jamie says, you know what, I do want to actually watch this video on intro to self-management. So I'm going to click this button here to add it to what is called the personal improvement backlog. So this is what I mean by helping you have some organization, be more intentional. And then let's say we also want to do that webinar. All right. And you see that check mark appears once it's added. And then maybe this article here as well. All right. So if we scroll down, note, it'll show you 3 by default. I can also click to not expand that question to bring it back to the main questions only. Load more recommendations. So it's going to give you 3 at a time, 3 at a time, 3 at a time. So you can keep going through here and see everything, right? As much as you want to pull into the screen. And so maybe Jamie also is curious about how to be better at using a coaching approach. So clicking here, expanding that. You can see here, we're also referencing where we're not necessarily like the only experts or the core experts in a topic, right? We might link to other resources that we have found that are useful, that we think are relevant to both, to Scrum and Agility. but also are coming from maybe the experts. So we're linking to like Coactive, or some different expertise here as well. All right, so you might be thinking, well, where are these things going? Okay, so I'm going to scroll back up here, and remember at the top, we are on our results. We looked at progress over time, and then now we're going to look at personal improvement backlog. And so this is where those resources that we've added are going to be. And then I can mark these as completed. So let's assume Jamie has watched this video. So I put the check mark here, and notice you will have your history. So I can click on completed and have kind of a history. So one thing I like to point out about this that I immediately saw as a benefit that I would have liked to have had is kind of having this history helps me when I am doing my regular reflection practices, like maybe quarterly, maybe annually. And I'm thinking about, well, what have I really done to grow and to learn? And I can use this for conversations with my leadership as well. I can use this with conversations with a coach or a mentor. And so I have both history, but I also have, here's what I want to do. And so if I want to go into a conversation about my professional development with my manager, right, I can have this kind of ready and say, like, here's why this relates to me growing in this area and this skill. And then maybe we set aside time and professional development budget to go into some deeper, maybe some more advanced training and things like that. I have this temptation to just click all the resources and say, I want to add all of them. I want to look at all of these resources. And so I just encourage you to really like kind of pause, take the breath and think about, well, what do I really need now? And then next, I can always come back to this. So again, this is the thing I love about this tool is, I spend time today. I go through some of these resources. I set aside some time to do that. And then maybe at the start of the next week, or maybe the start of the next month, I come back in. I look at where I'm at in the progress of going through the personal improvement backlog. And I say, okay, I've done these things. Now I'm going to go back to the results and look at adding some more. Right. So it kind of helps you take a more sustainable pace because you're not worried that, oh, this is the only time I'm ever going to see that resource. And so that's just a tip I have, is to not go crazy and like add everything right away. Because that's really just the same as making your product backlog a dumping ground for every stakeholder request. One more little feature, I say little feature, but it's pretty powerful feature that I want to show you here is Martina is going to share the results here with her coach. So if you have a coach that you're working with or a mentor that's kind of helping you improve, helping guide your journey, there's a coach sharing feature. So here in the upper right corner, when I click on coach sharing, okay, I can add a coach. And so your coach would need to have an account in Comparative Agility so that they would be able to access it. But you're basically going to add the email, done, and it would share the results. I am going to show you the coach's view. So what is the coach or the mentor going to see? So I've clicked over to a different account, clicked over to the coach account essentially. So you can see that the person who's doing the coaching is also using this personal improvement self-assessment for their own learning. And so what the coach is going to see though is when they click on this little caret next to Scrum Master Improvement, they will see the results of other people who have shared with them. So you see it says shared with me, and I had already shared Jamie's with the coach account. So I can click on that, and then now it's loading Jamie's results. And then something that's interesting, and I want to point out, this is all happening with conversations, right? Like this isn't meant to be an asynchronous work with your coach tool completely, right? Like when we're getting coaching, when we're getting mentoring support, right? We're in conversation. And so maybe based on some conversations, Jamie has asked me, like, hey, here's where I think I want to start focusing on. And I've given Jamie some feedback. And Jamie says, can you take a look at my personal improvement backlog? And then if there's any resources you think that would be helpful, can you add those to my personal improvement backlog? And so I can see the personal improvement backlog. And something that's pretty cool is I can actually add my own recommendations. So I could go to the existing recommendations and just do some check marks next to the ones that I think would be best for Jamie based on my knowledge and understanding. But I can also add some my own resources, right? If I have something else that's not really part of this self-assessment today, I can add my own to support Jamie. And so this is just adding it to Jamie's personal improvement backlog. So I'm going to create that, right? And you can see it's tagged as my recommendation, right? The coach's recommendation. Okay. So that's kind of how you can use this to work with coaches and mentors as well.